A rigid HOA slaps a quiet, new neighbor with a hefty fine because his car's color isn't on their approved list. They don't realize the man they're bullying is Keanu Reeves, who's had enough of being pushed around. With calm determination and serious resources, he turns their petty power trip into a lesson that shakes the entire HOA. Some neighborhoods look perfect from the outside, but inside, people are fighting quiet wars over the smallest things. This story takes place on one of those quiet streets, where a simple splash of color became a test of character, kindness, and what real strength looks like. The moving truck had barely left when the gossip started on Maple Crest Lane. Curtains twitched. Phones buzzed. At the end of the cul-de-sac, a bright orange sports car gleamed in the driveway of House 14, breaking the long, beige silence of identical SUVs. Next to it, the new owner stood alone, hands in the pockets of his worn leather jacket, watching the sunlight slide over the hood like it was something sacred instead of just metal and paint. His hair fell into his face as he leaned closer, thumb brushing a tiny chip no one else would have noticed. For him, that car wasn't decoration. It was memory. Across the street, Margaret, the HOA president, was already annoyed. She'd spent 10 years turning Maple Crest into a postcard, same mailboxes, same shutters, same colors parked in perfect rows. It made her feel safe, like if everything matched, nothing in her life would spin out of control again. When she saw the orange car, her chest tightened in a way she pretended was about property values, not the chaos she'd run from in her past. She grabbed her clipboard like armor, straightened her tucked-in shirt, and marched toward House 14 with the determined steps of someone who believed rules were the only thing holding the world together. The man heard her shoes on the walkway before she spoke. He turned, and for a second there was that familiar softness in his eyes, the same softness people had seen on 1,000 movie screens, the same face that strangers stopped in airports and restaurants. But here, on this quiet street, he was just trying to be a neighbor. "Hey," he said gently, voice calm and low, "you must be from the HOA." He didn't offer his name. He almost never did anymore. Quiet was safer. Ordinary was safer. Margaret didn't notice the flicker of recognition in herself when she looked at him. She was too focused on the orange. "Sir, we have community standards," she began, flipping through printed pages like a prosecutor. "All vehicles must conform to our approved neutral palette. Blacks, whites, grays, muted blues. No bright, distracting colors. Your car is non-compliant." The word landed like a small verdict. She held out a paper, already filled out with a violation notice and a fine that would sting almost anyone normal at least. He took the paper carefully, as if it might break. His eyes slid over the words, but they didn't really see the ink. Instead, he saw a late afternoon from years ago, someone laughing in the passenger seat, wind tangling her hair, her hand tapping the dash as she shouted, "Make it orange! It has to be orange! Life is too short for boring cars." The same someone whose hospital room had been all white and gray and far too quiet. His throat tightened. His fingers brushed the small photo tucked in his wallet never far from him. "It's just a car," he said softly, mostly to himself, even though he knew it was. From next door, a little girl in a pink helmet watched the scene from her bike, one foot on the ground, one foot still on the pedal. Her mother, Elena, stood on the porch, arms crossed, reading the body language even if she couldn't hear the words. She moved here for stability after everything fell apart, and she knew the look of a person trying not to cause trouble even while being pushed. When the man lifted his eyes again, Elena saw a strange mix, tiredness, patience, and something like quiet steel hiding underneath. She felt a tug of sympathy she couldn't explain. "Look," the man said to Margaret, choosing his words carefully. "I didn't know about the color rule. If it's really a problem, I'll figure something out. I don't want to upset anyone." The humility in his voice was real, not performative. He meant it. Fame had never been the thing that defined him. What defined him were all the losses he'd survived and the promise he'd made to himself to never become bitter. If following some color chart kept the peace for his new neighbors, maybe it was worth swallowing the ache. Margaret mistook his gentleness for weakness. "Good," she replied briskly. "You have 7 days. After that, additional fines will apply and the vehicle may be subject to towing at your expense. We have an image to maintain here." She tapped the clipboard for emphasis, then turned away, already composing the email she'd send to the whole community, reminding them why rules existed. Behind her, the orange car caught the sun, blazing like a small rebellion she refused to understand. As she walked off, the man exhaled slowly, eyes lingering on the bright hood. He could afford the fine 100 times over. He could buy the whole street if he wanted to. But that wasn't the point. The point was that this color, this exact shade, was the last thing she'd chosen before life took her away from him. Painting it over felt like burying her twice. He closed his eyes for a heartbeat, the weight of old grief pressing against his ribs, colliding with the simple, ridiculous reality of a suburban citation. Elena stepped off her porch, unable to stay silent. "Hey," she called softly, "everything okay?" She approached carefully, not wanting to intrude, but also not willing to watch someone get steamrolled by a rulebook. Up close, she finally saw him clearly, and for a second her jaw tensed in shock. She knew that face. Everyone did. But what froze her wasn't his fame. It was the way he looked at her, like he genuinely didn't expect to be recognized. Like he was always halfway apologizing for existing in someone's line of sight. "I'm fine," he said with a small, rueful smile. "Just learning the neighborhood laws the hard way, I guess." He tried to make it sound light, but his eyes drifted back to the car again, betraying the deeper story. Elena followed his gaze, then looked at the violation notice in his hand, then at Margaret disappearing around the corner like a victorious general. Something about it all hit a nerve, the way some people hid behind rules when what they really needed was compassion. Her daughter rolled her bike closer, eyes wide. "Mom," she whispered, tugging at Elena's sleeve, her voice trembling with the excitement of a secret discovery. "Mom, that's him." The girl stared up at the quiet man with the leather jacket, her mind catching up with her racing heart. She dropped her bike to the grass, took a hesitant step forward, and said the words that would change everything on Maple Crest Lane. "You're Keanu Reeves, aren't you?" He froze for half a second, like the air between them had turned to glass. Being recognized was something he'd lived with for decades, but he'd moved to this quiet street hoping, just maybe, that he could be just another neighbor with a worn leather jacket and a car that meant too much. Now a little girl in a pink helmet was looking up at him with eyes full of wonder, and he could see it happening, the shift from guy on the block to Keanu Reeves. He let out a small breath and gave her a gentle, almost shy smile. "Yeah," he admitted, voice soft. "I'm Keanu, but here I'm just John, your new neighbor." He said the last part carefully, like he was asking for permission without actually asking. The girl's mouth fell open, her hands flew to her cheeks, and she did a tiny hop that nearly sent her helmet sliding over her eyes. Elena grabbed the bike before it tipped and shot him an apologetic look, like her daughter's excitement was somehow her fault. "I'm sorry," Elena said quickly, cheeks flushing. "We didn't mean to bother you, she loves your movies. We can keep it quiet, I promise. We won't tell anyone." There was something honest in her voice that he noticed right away, the kind of honesty that doesn't come from good manners but from surviving enough to know that privacy is sacred. He shook his head with a little laugh. "You're not bothering me," he said. "It's just different, you know. I moved here because it looked peaceful. I'm still learning how to just live like a normal person." He shrugged, and for a brief moment the movie star completely disappeared. He was just a man trying to figure out where he fit. The girl finally found her words. "I watched Speed with my grandpa," she blurted, "but only the parts where you don't say bad words. He covered my ears for those." She looked guilty for a second. "You were really brave. Are you like that in real life, too?" The question hung there, simple and painfully direct. He glanced at the orange car, at the violation notice in his hand, at Margaret's house across the street with its perfect shrubs forming a tight little wall. "I don't know if I'm brave," he said honestly. "I just try to do the right thing even when it's hard. Movies make that look cooler than it really is." His mind flashed back to hospital corridors, to funerals, to nights spent alone when it would have been so easy to give up. Surviving those things didn't feel like bravery. It felt like putting one foot in front of the other, because stopping wasn't an option. Elena studied him, seeing the weight behind his words. She'd been through her own private war, a messy divorce, moving states with a child, building a life from almost nothing. Brave hadn't felt like a big speech to her either. It had felt like holding a shaking pen over a job application while the rent notice sat on the counter. "Sometimes," she said quietly, "just staying kind is the bravest thing you can do." Their eyes met, and there was a flicker of understanding between two people who didn't know each other's stories yet. but recognized the scars anyway. The girl tugged at his sleeve. "Is that your car? It's so cool, it's like a superhero color." She circled the orange sports car in slow, reverent loops, fingers hovering just above the paint. "Why is the lady mad at it? It's not loud, it's not broken." She frowned, child logic offended by adult nonsense. Keanu smiled sadly. "Some people like everything to look the same," he said. "Same colors, same rules, same everything. It makes them feel safe." He didn't say, and sometimes those are the people who hurt others without realizing it. That part he kept inside. "But this car, it's important to me. Someone I loved chose this color." His voice cracked just enough on the word loved that Alina glanced at him again, her expression softening. "You don't want to change it," Alina guessed quietly. He shook his head. "No, I really don't." He could still see her, laughter spilling out of her as they stood at the dealership years ago, her finger jabbing at the paint swatch. "Life is short, babe," she'd said. "If you're gonna drive fast, at least look like a sunset doing it." He'd rolled his eyes, pretended to resist, but in the end he'd ordered the exact shade she wanted. Now it was one of the last physical things left that was truly, unmistakably hers. Alina hesitated, then took a breath. "You know, Margaret's not the whole neighborhood," she said. "She likes control a little too much, but people here aren't all like that. Some of us actually like color." She glanced at her daughter's bright pink helmet as proof. "If you want, I could, I don't know, talk to a few neighbors. Maybe if enough of us push back, the board will reconsider the rule." He looked genuinely surprised. He'd grown used to people either putting him on a pedestal or staying away completely, too nervous to treat him like a real person. This, someone offering to stand next to him in something small but important, felt different. "You'd do that, for a guy who just showed up with a loud car and no curtains yet?" he asked, a hint of playfulness breaking through. Alina smiled, a little crooked. "My ex used to say I have a justice problem. I can't stand watching unfair things happen." Her eyes flicked to Margaret's house again. "And this is unfair. It's a car, not a crime scene." Before he could answer, a door slammed down the street. A teenager barreled out of his house with his phone held up, already recording. "No way," the boy gasped. "Mom, it's him, it's John Wick, he's on our street." He started jogging toward them, camera up, commentary already spilling. The girl with the helmet lit up even more, torn between delight and sudden anxiety. Keanu's shoulders tensed in a way that was almost invisible, but Alina saw it. That tiny moment revealed everything. The way his jaw clenched, the way his eyes flicked around for exits, like crowds meant danger even in a safe suburb. Fame had never been completely friendly, it had teeth. He stepped a little closer to the car, almost unconsciously using it as a barrier. Alina reacted without thinking. She stepped forward, putting herself slightly between him and the kid, voice firm but kind. "Hey," she called out, raising a hand. "Hold up a second, this is our neighbor, not a zoo exhibit." The teen skidded to a stop, confused. He'd expected squeals and selfies, not a shield wall of one tired but determined single mom. "But it's Keanu Reeves," the boy protested, still filming. "This is gonna blow up. Do you know how many views?" "Me Amber," a voice snapped from the porch. The teen's mother appeared, eyes fierce. "Put your phone down now." She gave Keanu an apologetic look. "I'm so sorry." He gets excited and forgets there are actual people behind the screen. To her son, she added, "Ask for permission or there's no Wi-Fi for a week." That threat worked like magic. The boy deflated, lowering his phone. Mr. Reeves, can I maybe later, if you ever feel like it, get a picture?" he stammered. "I won't post your house or anything, I swear, I'll just keep it." He swallowed, suddenly nervous. "Your movies helped me when my dad left. They made me feel, I don't know, less scared of everything." Those words cut through Keanu's defenses faster than recognition ever could. "What's your name?" he asked. "Louis," the boy said. "Nice to meet you, Louis," Keanu replied. "Tell you what, if we can all agree to keep this street our little secret, neighbor to neighbor, we can figure out that picture sometime." He looked around at the small cluster of people now watching, the mother on the porch, Alina, her daughter, the kid with the helmet, another older man pretending to weed his lawn while blatantly eavesdropping. "I came here because I needed a quiet place, not perfect, just human, you understand." Louis nodded, more serious now. "Yeah, I get it, I'm sorry," he said again, slipping his phone into his pocket for good this time. For a brief, fragile moment, something shifted on Maple Crest Lane. The street that had been ruled by printouts and guidelines felt, just for a heartbeat, like a real community, people looking at each other instead of over each other's shoulders. A tiny alliance formed right there on the sidewalk. A famous man who wanted to disappear, a tired mother who refused to let rules crush kindness, a kid searching for courage on screen and in himself. Then Margaret looked through her front window. Her eyes narrowed as she took in the little crowd forming around the orange car. She couldn't hear what they were saying, but she recognized the expressions: excited, conspiratorial, connected. That was not part of her plan for this neighborhood. She reached for her reading glasses, squinting as the new man turned slightly, profile in clear view. Recognition hit her like a jolt of electricity. Her hand flew to her mouth. Of course she knew that face. Everyone did. For a moment her mind raced ahead to possibilities, sponsorships, publicity, property values skyrocketing if a movie star lived here. Then her gaze landed back on the car, bright and defiant in the sunshine. Alongside the flash of greed came something darker. The fear that if she bent one rule, even for a celebrity, the whole structure she'd built might collapse. She let the curtain fall back into place and marched to her desk. The printer hummed to life as she changed the wording of the original violation. Her fingers flew over the keys with practiced precision, but this time there was a new edge to every sentence. Escalated noncompliance. Immediate remedy required. Vehicle subject to removal without further notice. Outside, unaware of the exact storm forming, Keanu looked at Alina and the small group around him. "Thank you," he said quietly, "for treating me like a person. That means more than you think." He glanced at the orange car again, at the bright promise it held and the threat it now represented. "I've spent a lot of my life fighting battles on screens," he added, a faint, wry smile pulling at his lips. "Maybe it's time I learn how to stand up for something in my own driveway." Before anyone could answer, a sharp notification ding came from his pocket and from several phones around them at once. An email from the Maple Crest Homeowners Association lit up every screen with the same subject line, in bold, unforgiving letters. Final notice: vehicle color violation, immediate action required. Keanu opened it, eyes scanning the new, harsher terms. A tow date, additional fines, threat of legal action if he resisted. The same quiet man who tried so hard not to make waves felt something old and powerful stir in his chest, a mix of grief, anger, and the fierce, stubborn love that had kept him alive when everything else fell apart. He folded the phone back into his pocket, jaw set. When he finally spoke, his voice was calm, almost gentle, but there was steel underneath now. "Okay," he murmured, more to himself than to anyone else. "If they want to fight over this car, then they're not just fighting me, they're fighting what she loved." He lifted his eyes to Alina, to Louis, to the little girl clutching her bike handles. "I think," he said slowly, "I'm done staying quiet." And as the late afternoon light burned gold against that impossible orange, the quietest man on Maple Crest Lane took his first small step toward a confrontation that would change the entire neighborhood, whether they were ready or not.